Atheist Alliance International podcast.
I don't make this stuff up.
You know, if you put Jesus Christ first, that he'll look after all your bills.
It's not fake, it's faith.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Atheist Alliance International podcast. I'm your host, Jason Sylvester. Just before we get started, I'd like to remind everybody to please hit that like and subscribe button. Today we're joined by Hugo Estrella, who's a new director with AAI, who's working on advocacy, and he's also a political science teacher in both Italy and Argentina. So he's got quite an interesting background, and he's here to tell us all about himself and what he's working on. So hello, Hugo, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Jason. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
It's a pleasure to have you. So why don't you start off and just give us a little bit about yourself. Tell our viewers a little bit of who you are and what you're doing.
Well, I was born in Argentina more years ago than I would like to. And I lived here, particularly became very active during my teenage years as a militant of the democratic movement that back then was underground. So it was a very good experience to be a part of it, to see how the country moved from a very tough dictatorship, the one of the generals. We had many dictatorships, and so I'm speaking of the last one that was between 1976 and 1983, and I was part of the student movement, which was connected or articulated with the Radical Party, which was the party of then the President Alfonsín, who was the transitional president to democracy, or the father of democracy, as they call him here now. Here I'm sitting in Argentina today. So I was very active then. My family was always involved in politics and in social democracy, and so it was a very good experience and a very good time to be involved in, because we felt that we were closing an era, and it was the opening of a new one from which we expected much more than what we in the end got. But that's the view from today. Back then it was quite a wonderful time. And apart from that, I come from an atheist family, a family of free thinkers. So I grew up without any kind of religious pressure at home. And I like to precise the term that it was at home that I had no pressure, because all around it was very, how to say, strange to be an atheist, say it openly, because most people, and that's one of the first how to say, challenges we face when they deny us the right to be an atheist. People cannot, most people who are trained or grown up in a religious environment, even if they are tolerant and nice people, tend to deny that anybody can be an atheist. So they say, you cannot be an atheist. You have to believe in something. Yes, I believe in many things, but I don't believe in gods. That's what makes me an atheist. And so that was sort of the pressure I felt at home, at school, and with relatives, and it was a social pressure, like most of us have gone through. And but that's a personal thing, and the political side of it is the opposition to clericalism, to the mixing religion and politics, which was very, very evident back then, with the military being completely, how to say, articulated with the church. The church, the Catholic Church, was the backbone of the dictatorship. Actually, many of the remnants of those dark days are connected to the influence of the church, like the desaparecidos. You probably heard that word, the missing people, and that's thanks to the involvement of the church leaders with the dictatorship. Because when the coup happened, the military passed a law, some sort of martial law, which they were willing to apply, killing people in the squares, and just openly killing everybody who was against the regime. And it was not a good how to say, propaganda for the church in a so-called Christian country. So and this is all history. It's on paper. The delegate of the Vatican had a meeting with the generals and told them, okay, you cannot do this, and they replied, well, but we're going to kill them anyway. Okay, kill them, but do it in a way that it's not evident. Do it in a quiet way. So that's how we had concentration camps with priests blessing the torturers, and people being killed and their bodies disposed on from planes and thrown into the sea or into the Rio de la Plata, the River Plate, and so on. So it was a really hard time. They tried to impose some sort of religious education in public schools, which Argentina has been one of the first countries with secular education from 1884. So it was a hard thing to do. The first time that religion was imposed at school, religious education was imposed in public schools, was with the dictatorship of Perón in the early 40s and up to the mid 50s, when he abolished that law and established religious education. And then after he was overthrown with the Revolución Libertadora in 1955, secular education was reimposed. And that law was finally changed or abandoned like 8 years ago or 7 years ago, under the new Peronista government. They call themselves left-wing, but it's the same party, Perón, and it was changed. So now there is no more secular education on paper. And so that was one of the struggles we had with the military trying to impose religious education. And well, it was quite a nightmare. And then with democracy, we thought everything had changed, and all those struggles were at our back. And then when my elder son started the kindergarten, not even primary school, the kindergarten, there was he came back home telling us that there was some sort of prayers at school, which, like, it was a very stupid thing, but it was yet an imposition of a God figure, like a blessing for the food. So I thought it was something related only to his school, which was a public school. And I went there to speak with the teacher and the director of the school, the principal, and they said, well, this is a customary thing, and we are not going to change it because you don't like it. In case you can change your son from this school, which was the school that belonged to me because of the neighborhood and the taxes I was paying. So I started a campaign for respecting secularity at school, and then I was involved in the Pugwash movement, which is a disarmament movement that was started by Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein in 1955. And so I went to a conference in Oslo, and I passed through some building with a strange banner with the Norwegian Humanist Association and some Bertrand Russell pictures. So I thought, these are my people, and I entered to find out what that association was. I met Levi Fragel, who was then the president of the Norwegian Humanists, and he explained to me what the organization was, and I said, well, this is what I've been trying to fight for. And so he put me in touch with what then was called IAGU, International Humanist and Ethical Union, and got a lot of support. They kind of internationalized the situation I was denouncing in Argentina. And well, that's how we created, we gathered all the people who was moving around supporting this little struggle of mine, formed an association, which is the Argentine Secular Ethics Association, and that was 1998, 99. And ever since, it's been growing, and we've been networking internationally. Then I became the delegate from IAGU for Latin America, started working with other organizations in the States, especially with the Council for Secular Humanism. I met Paul Kurtz, who was a very supportive and very dear friend. And then we started the Ibero-American Ethical Humanist Association or Network in 2002, 2003 in Peru, in Lima. And well, it's been moving ever since. Then I had problems, very tough problems, because the government changed in Argentina, and the fascists that are connected with the church gained power especially in the province where I was living, in Cordoba, and they made my life kind of complicated. And so, to make a long story short, I had to leave the country. I applied for transnational director of the Center for Inquiry, which was the organization of Paul Kurtz in the States. Since I had been part of this disarmament group, the Pugwash group, and president of the International Young Pugwash group at the time, I had announced the year before that there were 3 programs that were supported by the US Navy in Argentina under the table, because it was without the official knowledge of the Argentine government. So of course it was Bush time, and I was denied the work visa to go to the States, yet I had to leave. And so Paul told me, look, I pay you your salary, and you work for us, but do it from wherever you can. We can't take you to the States, which was a blessing because I didn't want to live in the States. And since I have the dual citizenship, Italian and Argentine, I moved to Italy, where I had studied in Pisa, a wonderful place in Tuscany. And so I settled there with my children, who had also, my children had been threatened. And my wife, who is, there are no saints, but she's close to sanctity. And so we all of us moved to Italy, and I've been settled in Italy ever since. I started the Center for Inquiry Italy. I've been co-founder in 2005 of the International Alliance of Free Thinkers, and well, involved in this free thinking, atheist, secularist world for forever. And of course, with the usual enemy, which is in my case, the Catholic Church, because it's in the countries I've lived, is the main opposition to freedom, to free thought, to free inquiry, to everything we know. Like the Islamists are in the Arab world, or the Hindus are in India. It's been my fate to be always struggling in the Catholic dominated world. So I engage as much as I can in movements that are confronting the power of the church in everyday life and in politics. And that's why I'm often in Poland, working with our fellows in Poland, with the atheists and free thinkers there, since they have that nightmare of the party PiS, PIS, not peace, but peace. And there we met with some fellows from AAI, and they proposed me to join, which I'm very happy to do. And since last month, our organization joined the AAI, and here I am.
Cool. Thank you for that that introduction to who you are and what you're working on. It's quite the interesting story. You seem to have been involved in quite a lot of things in a couple of different countries, or a few different countries. So you mentioned this, like the social pressure, and we've had people on, previous guests, who've been in whether like you living in a Catholic country, other people living in Muslim countries. The like is to come out and say you're an atheist in strongly Catholic country must have been interesting. Like you were saying, like people were denying. I mean, I've had the same thing. I was visiting the Philippines for work, and the cab driver was asking me what I believe in, and I said, "Oh, I'm an atheist." And he's like, "Oh, you have to believe in something." So I know exactly what you mean. Like, just there are certain devout believers who just cannot wrap their head around the fact that how can you not believe in something? Like, you know, they just can't get their head around it. So it's interesting that, you know, because a lot of atheists tend to have grown up religious, and as adults sort of made the transition to atheism. But as you said, you were kind of brought up never having believed. So that's unusual, especially for the, you know, as you said, you mentioned at the beginning, more years than you'd like to talk about, but that to have like, say, 40, 50 years ago, to have been an atheist in a Catholic country, because as we know, it's like the era of new atheism it's only like sort of like the last 2 decades that it's really sort of exploded in popular culture, to be out of the closet, so to speak, about atheism. So it's interesting that you had this experience from a very young age, and especially in a predominantly Catholic culture like Argentina. So, yeah. And you mentioned that the church was sort of complicit with the military dictatorship, which I had forgotten about. I was reading a book about 2 years ago that was talking about some of the naughty sort of backroom dealing that was going on between dictatorships in Central and South America and the church. And you reminded me of that. And like, oh, I should refresh my memory on that. So I had forgotten that had happened there in Argentina. So it's interesting that you brought that up. So can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit more, on how the church was behaving with the dictatorship and what was going on?
Yes, definitely, and it still goes on, because since we have an Argentine Pope, the presence of the church in everyday politics is more than evident. And Argentina was always very, or how to say, much more developed and culturally liberal than the rest of Latin America. So, especially in Buenos Aires, where the brains, so called, of the country were settling. So, being a country of immigration and being secular, because there was to get so many immigrants from Europe, it was necessary to be secular for them to become part of the society. So together with the immigration laws in the last 20 years of the 19th century, we had these secularist laws, and so it was like kind of brewing a new society. And the Catholic Church always rejected that, and it was very much connected with the how to say, those who felt to be the aristocracy of the country, the wealthy aristocracy, Catholic, Bourbonic, like it was very similar to the south of Italy. There was northern Italy with which was much more integrated into Europe, with diversity of thoughts and closer to France and influenced by the French Revolution and so on. And there's a southern Italy which was dominated by Spain, with the church and the Bourbonic approach to people and to nature, and feeling the owner of people and the owner of nature. So the what today is called extractivism was then the back in the back of their minds what ruled them. And this is very well connected with the church and the church structure for society. So in most other Latin American countries, the church became more popular, rooted with people, whilst in Argentina it was connected with the ruling elite, with the conservative part of the elite, because the elite was divided into the liberals and the conservative. So there's been this struggle going on, and the church has been very much connected with the concentration of the power of the army, of course of the hierarchy of the church, and so on, and the wealthy people. So it was, and it still is, a very much, how to say, Franco-like, if you want to have a connection with some recent regime in Europe. It's like the Franco regime. It's really really fascist approach to society. So that's been the role of the church, and this Pope hasn't changed much. This Pope is a very a very clever politician and a populist. So he comes from the. I mentioned Perón before. Perón was the Argentine version of Mussolini. You know, Mussolini was a former socialist who and an atheist who changed to serve the ruling classes and to build this nationalistic spirit in Italy, and for that he needed the blessing of the church and the blessing of the king, and he had this three-headed regime, and this Pope learned from Perón, was a member of the Peronista party. Perón was very close to Mussolini, was the Argentine military attaché in the Argentine embassy at the time of the growth of fascism and Nazism. That's why we ended up filled with Nazi and fascist criminals in Argentina. All of them escaped to Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil. And Argentina was the first haven for them. It was the time of Perón, of course, in the immediate post-war. This Pope comes from that tradition, from the tradition of this populism. So saying that you are working for the people and actually working for the concentrated elite that feels blessed by God to rule the poor rest and to abhor everything that has to do with modernity, with liberal democracy, and that's why even if he tends to be moderate in his speech, in his deeds, Mr. Bergoglio is much worse than the German Pope that was before him. You can see his visits to Hungary every time that Orban is facing an election, and of course he pretends not to speak politics, but he's embracing Orban and giving his blessing to the situation there. Same happens with Poland and that fascist party. That it's terrible. It's worse than medieval, I would say, because in the Middle Ages you didn't have something to compare with, but since we've lived almost 300 years in modernity, it's incredible that something like that can happen. You know what Poland is facing, and that state-sponsored homophobia, that state-sponsored clericalism, and building statues and banning every kind of criticism towards the John Paul II Pope and stuff like that is really disturbing. And I fear that new Black International, as they called it in the 30s, is alive again, and it's gaining more and more ground. And so it happens also now in Italy, and is likely to gain strength in France, pretending to be different, pretending to be more modern, but in the end they come for our liberties, they come for our equality, they come for our schools, they come for our healthcare system, and it's very, very disturbing, as I said before. And as I said, I live part of my year in Italy and part of my year in Argentina, so I'm flying from hell to hell with these people growing in power and growing in influence. Argentina is now facing a presidential election in which we likely are going to change from a so-called left-wing populism to an extreme right-wing populism, which is more or less like being hit by a truck or being hit by a train. In the end, is very, very disturbing, very worrisome for the future. So we have this crazy candidate pretending to speak with the soul of his dog, where he gets the advice from his dead dog and his sister, who seems to be the one ruling the party, is a medium between the dead dog and the guy. It's a nightmare.
People are going to vote for this guy.
Sorry?
And people are going to vote for this guy with this who talks to his dead dog.
He ended up first in the elections last week.
That's
and
crazy.
So there are, here in Argentina, there's a very strange system that there are compulsory primaries, and so you get the tendency of what the election is going to be like. And the three main parties were, this guy ended up first. Then the center right-wing party ended up second, and 1 point behind them, the actual populist party, which is facing 150% or 120, 150, we don't know, percent inflation per year. So the economy is a mess, and the country is a mess. So the choices are are not very great choices, and I really don't know how we're going to end up. And this guy is a follower of Trump, of Bannon, Orban. It's part of the international extreme right-wing movement, as I said before, what was called once the Black International, and the church is part of it. So he pretends to privatize everything, but schools, which are the main business of the Catholic Church, are already privatized. So he wants to, instead of closing public schools, which already suffer from lack of funding, because most of the funding for education goes to church-owned schools, he plans to establish this voucher system, like has already failed in the States and in other parts of the world. In Chile, of course, it just opens the gap, widens the gap between the rich and the poor. Yeah, so we are going to have very poorly funded public schools and very wealthy church schools, which will educate the new ruling elite, which is the children of the old ruling elite, basically, but paid from us, so paid with state money. And it's really a hard time. And in Italy, you have Meloni, who is also part of the same group, pretending that fascism wasn't too bad, that
she's related to, she's descended from a fascist, isn't she? I remember reading something about that when she was running.
Yeah, and she's the nicest one. If you could have a closer look into the ministers or the president of the Senate and or the other leaders of her group, they are really creepy. She is the nicest face, in a broad sense of being nice, but yet she is the most polite, let's say. There is all that madness going on with the big substitution. You know, that Soros is funding the Africans to come to Europe to for an ethnic cleansing and and get the Italians out of Italy and fill it with black people coming from Africa, and all that madness is being heard and is being said openly by ministers. So it's crazy. And well, that's a kind of government that we have in Italy so far. Fortunately for Italy, it still is in Europe, so the European framework keeps them, how to say, contained. They cannot be as harmful as they could, since they have to conform to the European law and to the European rules. But it's very, very disgusting. And well, I fear very much for what's going to happen to our democracies in the near future. What Trump's done in the States and what these people are doing in Europe, it's more evident in, of course, when you get far from that. You also live far from the center, so you probably witnessed that these monsters are growing and are tending to gain more power and to become more ugly than in the center. In the center, there is a sort of agreement of gentlemen to pretend to be more modern and more educated than they really are. But yet it's necessary to keep a clear eye and to keep an open mouth and say everything and stop them, because they grow out of the silence of the population. Most people tend to be quiet and not to react until they touch their wallet or their personal freedom. But we need to be aware that it's like Bertolt Brecht. First they came for the gays and I wasn't gay, so I didn't care. And they came from the Jews and I wasn't a Jew and I didn't care, and now they come for me and it's too late. So I think it's very important to be very active and very how to say, moving people around to be aware of this, and trying to act not as a bunch of ghettos that we seem to live in the last days, in the last years, but to live in a plural society which is composed by people from all those ghettos they want to close us in. You are the atheist, you have to be with the atheists. You are gay, you have to be with the gays. You are whatever. No, we are part of a liberal society and a different, diverse society. So we have to feel everything that happens to other person who is a victim of this, as if they do it to us. So that's my sensation today. That's why I care for the Poles. I'm not a Pole, but I feel that whatever is happening there is affecting me. And well, I think that as an international association, we have to also be very much aware of this and try to fight for liberal democracy and for open societies to survive this nightmare.
Indeed. I'm reminded of the quote by Edmund Burke: "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." So as you said, it comes out of the silence. So we need to speak up and push back against these infringements. So definitely concur.
Yeah. Great. So I'm happy to be part of AAI, because I think it's since it has an international scope, and has a chance to speak up in international locations like the UN and so on. It's important that we are there, and we do our best for struggling for secular states, for freedom, basically. And so I'm very happy to be part of this network.
Well, we're happy to have you, and thank you for all of your hard work and efforts on behalf of liberal democracy and secular humanism around the world.
Thank you. It's just self-defense. It's not a choice. I think it's a commandment from we've taken from those who fought before us for us to be free. And it's living in Italy, for instance, was and in the center of Italy, which was the center of the resistance, is very, very nice to have had the chance to live with people who fought from house to house with the Nazis and with the fascists, and everybody lost someone, and they feel that their democracy and their freedom is something that they won by themselves. Is very important to listen at the old people who did it when they were 12, 14, 13, and risking everything is very, very, very important. So it's also a good, how to say, a good experience, and a good chance to learn from those who fought before us. And we cannot sit and be comfortable and watch TV and eat popcorn and think that it's not going to happen again, because you don't realize, and they will be back before we can move. So we have to be very clear and very strong.
I agree. Well, thank you for all your efforts on behalf of humanity.
Well, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, and I hope we will meet again soon and do something together. We are working now in some proposals for the UN regarding the equal situation of widows, and in countries where their rights are not respected in equal terms as widowers and so on. So there are interesting things that are moving around, and I think we can make a difference. And of course we cannot do everything, but we can be a little ring in a chain of this struggle. So we have to network with like-minded people, be there atheist or not, but people who have the same sense of justice and the same sense of defending freedom, and from our perspective try to join a broader effort for defending the enlightenment in society.
Agreed. Well, thank you very much. It's been great talking to you, and thank you for making the time to come on the show. And I hope everybody enjoyed your perspective and what you've been up to. And hopefully they agree with what you're fighting for. So,
okay. Thank you, Jason. Okay. Have a nice day. And hello to your audience. I would like to get some feedback and to be able to have some connection. If anybody is interested in discussing or bringing up proposals, we are more than open to listen to them and to discuss this. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming on the show. And I'd like to remind everybody to please hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see everybody on the next episode. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, thanks for listening, and don't forget we're on YouTube, so follow us on YouTube. Just search for Atheist Alliance International and please subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're also on all of your favourite podcast platforms, so make sure that you follow us on there as well. See you next time.